Hello everyone, it's Alan again, and I just kind of want to go over some of the CSS that was added in the new version of AltosWeb. First thing I want to touch on is what I added to the head section of my HTML page is I added this name, viewport, content with meta tag. What this is going to allow me to do is to create media queries inside my CSS document so that I can change some of the CSS styles based on the device width of that the browser is sending to the page. So if I flip over to my CSS, you see it's a lot more complicated than what's in the original AltosWeb that's posted on the course homepage. Um, I'm using the wrapper element, and I'm telling everyone that they need to because this is basically where I'm going to explain how we're using this responsive design concept to come in, and we're going to basically rely on the wrapper to accomplish this for us. As you can see, it's set to a width of 96%. That's with just a little bit of padding on the left and right. In an earlier video, I touched on a little bit of thumb room, and that padding at 2%, that's the thumb room I'm talking about. So the main part of the CSS is actually applying when I design the page back down at this size, actually. And so most of what you see in the top part of the document is going to apply here. The reason being is that a lot of design experts are saying to start small with your website design. Start with a mobile design and then as you make your things larger, to build your desktop out of it. It's supposed to help in the design process, which I agree with, because if you start with a desktop design and then try to figure out how am I going to squeeze it down into a mobile display, it can really it might not turn out as well as you would hope. But if you start small and get bigger, then you can always add new content in as you have more room. As you can see, I did with the left-hand menu on a larger screen. Is that now that there's room over here, we could add some more things into the page. So I'm gonna go back smaller though. Sorry. Let's see. Alright, so I touched on the image tag already and how this CSS is helping to make sure that the images stay within their container and resize according to how the container resizes based on the width of the wrapper. And this show medium tag is where that sentence is about now that you have room. I turn it off here because I don't want it to show on the smaller size. That's why you don't see it up here in the nav section. But as it gets larger down the page, you'll see. Keep that in mind. It's very interesting to note with the jQuery, I actually put some CSS in my CSS document for that jQuery include. It's kind of cool how jQuery can manipulate the document, and then you can still have CSS defined so that those manipulated documents still have styles. So in the jQuery class, if you're in the jQuery video, if you were kind of curious how, even when I disabled JavaScript, that it still looked like a link because the cursor changed. I'm doing that here. And if you were interested to see how all the first letters of the words were capitalized, I actually did that through CSS here. And then it's set to top and left. You can change this to bottom or right respectively, and that would move it around the page to the different corners of the underlying div. I don't really want to go too deep into relative and absolute positioning. I know it's really something you kind of have to explore on your own. Basic rule of thumb is that if you declare something to be absolute, then its parent needs to be declared relative, or where you want that absolute element to be positioned on the page, you need to add that position relative to. So in this example, I'm making the H3 absolute so that it actually floats over the image, but I'm setting the div that it's around to be relative so that it's relative to that div. Let's see. For the images, I added the extra divs in the image area. Call to mob clear. It's actually turned off by default, and basically I want to turn those on as the page gets larger. That's where we come down to these media queries. So now that we're down here, you can see one of the first things I do is when a device has a minimum width of 560, is this is when we start breaking the divs, and the images break into two halves basically. That's about this breakpoint. If you look up at the top right of my browser, you can barely see it and it disappears so quick, but as I'm resizing, you can see the little pixels up there. So my break is at 560, so bam, right there, that's the break. So here is where those divs get turned back on and cause the two column break. And in addition, um, the divs are cut into half and floated left and have a little bit of margin, or a little bit of padding rather. I have to adjust a little bit of those things. The outer C and inner C is a technique that I used for the second half, the down specializing in and we will area. It does the same thing at the same breakpoint. So it's right at this breakpoint that these two split as well. And I'm using basically a different technique with that CSS document, using the table cell and the table. Um, Hopefully, if you want to learn more about that, you can pause around this area and kind of look at my code and figure it out. Let's see, so, and this is where I want columns to enact, so the inner C's actually get their column widths at this point. And then I have a large break, and the large break happens at 1024 pixels, and what it does is that's the one that pulls the menu out to the left and creates the extra column on the page. So as we start sizing, if you look up at the top right, about 1024, a little bit more. Let me scroll up to. Let's see, 1024. Oh, a little more, a little more. Boom. Yeah. So right at that 1024 break, it makes that switch. In the next lab and the next assignment, we'll be using media queries to make design changes based on the width of the browser. They are requirements, so if you're not using a style sheet, then you really need to get your site into a style sheet so that you can perform these media queries. It's going to be difficult for you to do them in each page, especially as pages get more complex and we add a couple more pages later on. Anywho, hope this was helpful in kind of going over the CSS a little bit. If you have any questions, please let me know.